As the amazing atheist has spoke about, many Republicans in America do not seem to care about education, or at least seem to blow it off. And I, in my personal opinion, say education is the most important thing, because if you have a bunch of stupid people, then corporations and technology will not progress. And it is what separates certain countries from becoming rich or poor. I mean, there's a classic model called the Singapore model, where Singapore was an extremely poor country. They had little land, and they were so bad that they actually wanted their neighbors in neighboring countries to bail them out and to become part of their country. And they rejected them because they thought that Singapore was such a risk to make their own country poor. So what Singapore focused on was education, and it paid off, because then technology and jobs went to Singapore, and then now Singapore has a higher standard of living than many European countries, and even better than America. So when people tend to neglect or brush off education, is a very stupid ideal, and anyone who thinks like that is really stupid. I mean, education is the end-all be-all, and our education system has slipped. Like, in the 50s, we were the best education. Now we're like somewhere around 20, and we need to go back to number 1, otherwise we're going to fall. And right now in America, we are at risk. I mean, we do not have as good of education as, say, Czech Republic. Now, Czech Republic, they give out wages 1/3 amount of ours, and people are double as educated as us. So, granted, why would a corporation want to start a business and give jobs in America when they could pay people 1/3 the amount in Czech Republic, people who are twice as competent and educated? And we need to keep up with the education system in general, and we cannot fall out like that. I mean, in the corporation eyes, we need to have a reason for jobs to be here. And if we're just going to like get rid of the education system, make the education system like Brazil, or one of the worst education systems in the world, like any third world country, then we will become a third world country. And that's why it is important, if not the most important factor, to focus on education. And I think that even though I consider myself a libertarian, I think that is one of the factors that kind of makes me tilt in certain directions. Because, granted, I agree with 95 or more % of the libertarian ideals, but when it comes to education, if we had a really crappy education system from a certain side of the libertarian argument, depending on how libertarian they are, then I don't know how well we'd progress, because we need to have educated people for the new ages of technology. But granted, I think that we could have a libertarian system of privatized school, and the thing would be is that, granted, private school is not always that bad. For instance, if we had the private schools instead of public schools, the cost of private schools would go down significantly, at least in the short term. And it'd be like, for instance, instead of having stupid quarrels like, oh, should we teach evolution or creationism in school, you choose a school that best fits yourself, which is ideal. Like, people could go to a school that specializes in mechanics or specializes in computers to begin with. And I think that is progressive. I think a privatized education system is quite functional, because if you have many different competitions within the education system, there's room to progress. And if one school makes a good model, they'll get more students, and therefore other schools will want to make that same model to have the best education system, which is progressive. Not to mention that they will all want to compete in prices to keep the prices low, which would also be a factor. So I think that the privatized school system would be more functional. But one of the problems with this is the whole ideal of what happens to all the poor people who can't afford to go to school now. Granted, I think that, I mean, you're going to pay one way or the other. You're going to pay through your taxes, or you pay for private school. And I think it's quite fair that you wouldn't pay for the taxes, because, like, what about old people? Why should they have to pay for schools? And I mean, it's really true. I mean, someone's 80, they could barely even afford to exist, period. Why should they support someone's schooling in the first place? And that is also a detriment, because it's like the senior citizens have all this time, and they're sick of paying high taxes for schools, so they just go and vote down the budgets, and then the school systems stagnate and become worse and worse. And I think the privatize is progressive. Now, with the situation of kids not being afforded, I think we can use our natural system that a corporation could get a tax base benefit, tax reduced by giving to charity. And I think that a corporation could get a tax benefit in the first place by actually, for instance, giving scholarships. And I think that's very progressive. And that every time a corporation gives a scholarship to poor kids who cannot afford college, then we'll give them a tax base. And corporations will be totally for this, because they want to have progressive people, smart people, to be able to do the jobs for them. So I think that would be totally functional and a libertarian ideal. And I think that this, in my opinion, is the most functional system. And it's hard for me to say because it's on paper, and communism sounded good on paper, and until we put it into action, it's basically just paper. But it's my vision of what I see, and